Week 7 of the fantasy football season, and here's a few defense DST units. I would start this week. The first one, the Cleveland Browns. So the Browns, the hot pickup this week off the waiver wire, and rightfully so. I know they don't get a lot of fantasy points. Is this Brown team this season not really causing a lot of turnovers on the year? But they get to the quarterback, 15 sacks on the season. They've only allowed 65 points so far in the early going. Is this Cleveland Brown team in their first 5 games of the year, which is pretty solid. And now they got a good matchup here. Gardner Minshew in the Indianapolis Colts. They give up the 7th most fantasy points to DSTs on the season. So the Browns, they beat the undefeated San Francisco 49ers, holding them down in Week 6, 17 points, 3 sacks, and an interception. And this week here at Indianapolis, indoor track, better weather conditions. I think this defense, starting with Myles Garrett, could get to Gardner Minshew early and often. You got Denzel Ward, one of the best corners in the league. Darius Smith, so they got 3 solid pieces on this defense that can make plays, and they have been this season here. I know this Brown team, the record otherwise really hasn't been great, 3-2 on the year, but they've gone out there last week, beat the undefeated San Francisco 49ers, and now I think this team, this could be the turnaround they needed. So right now, their defense was a hot pickup off the waiver wire, and rightfully so. I think they go into Indianapolis and make it a tough game for Gardner Minshew, and definitely a defense to start. Defense is the Seattle Seahawks. So the Seahawks, another streaming option off the waiver wire, and a big pickup they were this week. So the Seahawks, a good matchup versus the Arizona Cardinals, that in the middle of the pack give up the 14th most fantasy points to DSTs on the season. And we've seen some decent games from Seattle this year. Week 2 with Detroit, 31 points allowed, but they had 2 sacks and interception, 2 fumble recoveries on that game, and a touchdown. Then week 4 at the Giants, 3 points allowed, 11 sacks, 2 windows, a fumble recovery in that one, and a pick 6, 99 yards in that game. And then week 6 in Cincinnati, I know they didn't do much, 17 points allowed, 3 sacks and an into. But this week here, back home in Seattle, it's been since week 3 they haven't been home as a Seattle Seahawks team. They'll have the 12th man behind them, pretty much haven't played a home game in a month. And this Arizona offensive line, one of the worst lines in the league, and Joshua Dobbs, the league's definitely adjusted. And the last 2 games, he really hasn't done much. So with all those factors and Seattle's defense, they can fly to the football and make plays. I like him as a start. This week, the next DSTs, the Vegas Raiders. The Raiders, another team off the waiver wire that people picked up. And they had a good week last week, was this Raider defense versus New England Patriots. 17 points allowed, 4 sacks, and into, and a safety in week 6. And even in week 5 on Monday Night Football versus the Packers, 13 points allowed, 2 sacks, and 3 intos. So this week here, matchup at the Bears, that give up the 3rd most fantasy points to DSTs on the season. I know it's a cross-country trip, which obviously is tricky and throws teams off a lot, where they got to travel to the East Coast. But right now, Tyson Bagnan is starting for this Chicago Bear team, and I don't see this kid really doing much. Crosby getting into the backfield there, making some plays and sacks. And this Raider defense, the last couple weeks, their defense have led them to victories, keeping offenses into the team. So right now, with a good matchup here at Chicago, I think this Raider team once again is a DST that could crack the top 12. And a start this week, the next start's the Buffalo Bills. So the Bills last week went in there and played a good game versus the New York Giants coming to town, not giving up a touchdown. And even with their injuries here for Buffalo, obviously the key guys, Matt Milano out for the season, Tre'Davious White out for the season, Von Miller not 100%. They're still going out there and getting the job done here as this Buffalo Bill team. So the last few weeks for them, week 5 versus Jacksonville, 25 points allowed, 5 sacks, 2 fumble recoveries. And last week versus the Giants, 9 points allowed, 3 sacks in that one. So this week here, great matchup with the New England Patriots. I give up the 2nd most fantasy points to DSTs on the season. So this Bill team, I think they're going to get pressure on Mac Jones and Will Grier. Whoever the start is going to be this week here, it just doesn't matter in my opinion. This Bill team, one of the best units in the league here. 4-2 on the season is this Buffalo Bill team. And this week here in a division matchup, and one of the worst offenses in the league, I think they tee off once again is Buffalo. And definitely a DST to start this week in the 5th and final defense DST unit. I look to start this week here is the Washington Commanders. So the Commanders, another streaming option defense off the waiver wire. And they have a great matchup at the New York Giants. They give up the most fantasy points to DSTs on the season. So the New York Giants haven't scored a touchdown since week 3 versus San Francisco 49ers. And we'll see if it's going to be Daniel Jones or Tyrod Taylor. To be honest, his Shine offense actually operated better with Tyrod Taylor on the center. So the last few weeks here for this Commander defense, week 5, They got the doors blown off by the Bears, 40 points allowed, 3 sacks. But last week at Atlanta, they buckled down and played good football, 16 points allowed, 3 sacks and 3 interceptions. So this week here, I could see a similar type of game here in the NFC East where the Giants might be able to put points up, but their offensive line, one of the worst and banged up lines in the league, if not the worst. Tyrod Taylor or Daniel Jones, you still could get a hand on them and get a decent amount of sacks. And like I said, this team hasn't scored a touchdown in 3 weeks offensively as this New York Giant unit. So right now, I think the Commanders are a good pickup off the waiver wire if they're still available. And a team that could crack the top 12 in fantasy points. So that's a few defense DST units I look to start here, week 7 of the fantasy football season.